good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve, hoping this video finds you well and in fine fettle. And Boris Johnson, oh my goodness, he's right back at the top of the news again. He came out this morning and basically laid out the ground rules for any negotiations with the EU, and his first statement was that there will be no Irish backstop, not even a temporary Irish backstop. And as you recall in my previous video, I was talking about how this is going to be a real obstacle, and for him just to put his foot down in this way is absolutely, it's the way to go. It's the only way to deal with a negotiation. And negotiation is one of those very fine arts, and one of the keys to any negotiation. And anyone out there who's been in a negotiation, serious or not so serious, knows that you must always be prepared to get up from that table and walk away at any moment, should the other party be just absolutely demanding way more than they deserve. Because if you're frightened to walk away from that table, the other party's got you. They got you by the short and curlies, and you are done like a dog's dinner. And it takes years. This is why we have special negotiators who go in and work on this kind of stuff, because it is such an art to get a deal that is a good compromise and a good fit for all people. But the EU, of course, doesn't want to negotiate. It never wanted to negotiate. It does not negotiate. And as we've gone through before, whenever votes have gone against the EU, like the Maastricht Treaty or the Lisbon Treaty or the Constitution of the EU even, when it doesn't go their way, they just want to have another vote until it does go their way. And this is what they want to have with Brexit, of course, is a second referendum. And I am hoping to God that that doesn't happen. But certainly the way Boris Johnson has come out boxing on this first day with his first announcement is it's quite heartwarming, because I think that somebody really needs to stand up to these bullies in Europe. Anyway, let's go over to this great little letter in Zero Hedge, and I'll come back and we'll do a quick wrap up. Okie dokie, here we go. Zero Hedge, Boris Johnson throws down the gauntlet. No backstop, not even temporary. Boris Johnson laid down the ground rules for discussion with the EU. The EU says it won't accept them. On Thursday, Boris Johnson threw down the gauntlet with a call for the total abolition of the backstop. He also said the government was turbocharging preparations for a no-deal break on October the 31st if the EU refused to engage. At a stroke, Mr Johnson appeared to sweep away the camp nominally led by the Attorney General Geoffrey Cox, and still believed that with a tweak, perhaps a time limit or a unilateral exit mechanism, the backstop could be rendered acceptable. Not only did he announce that the Irish backstop must be abolished, but he went further, turning the tables to set the conditions for any future talks with the European Union. EU diplomats and officials in Brussels have been clear that this will not happen, even if that puts the UK and the EU on a collision course towards no deal over the apparently intractable problem of the Irish border. It is a wearingly familiar argument. Mr Johnson contends that the entire UK should be able to leave the EU customs union and a single market whilst preserving a status quo border in Ireland. The question now is who will blink first as pressure builds towards an impending no deal in the autumn. Diplomats and officials were clear on Thursday that Mr Johnson's statements, taken together with a decision to purge the cabinet of all forces of compromise, could only be explained by a desire to create the conditions for an election. The only question in European minds is whether that election comes as a result of Parliament blocking no deal and Mr Johnson being forced to request an extension to Article 50, or after a no deal has already happened. But the notion Johnson will seek an extension other than for a week or so to tie up loose ends in preparation for no deal seems silly. Also silly is a notion Parliament will block no deal. Parliament has no such power other than to force an election, and it's now likely too late to force an election in time to kill Brexit. Besides, with Labour splintered, it's likely Johnson will achieve a strong working majority in the next election, while as long as both sides believe the other side will blink, neither will. It may take a crippling recession in the EU before it comes to its senses. Germany, EU's exporters in general, will get crushed in the event of a no deal. And the EU will blink. But I still think A no deal, hard exit is the best deal for Britain, and we will work it out from there. Now, of course, one of the big objections that I have to the EU and to the globalist movement is that it's AON, all or nothing. And again, you know, with these treaties, there is no nuance. Brexit was a yes-no answer. There are some good things about the European Union, there's no doubt about it. But the worst thing, the absolute worst thing about the EU is it's run by an unelected bureaucracy. And that is so dangerous because these people, as we've seen over and over again, are unaccountable. You know, look at the food regulations. I don't know if you heard about this, but there were specific lengths for carrots. They had to be straight. Bananas had to have a specific curve, and any fruit or vegetable that didn't meet these requirements was discarded. This is absolutely insane. And of course, because it's run by bureaucrats and committee, once these things are set in motion, it is virtually impossible to stop them. You take years and years and years and years even to find the right committee or restrike the committee that made that decision. It's absolutely outrageous, and the public, the people that pay the bills, and let's face it, if it wasn't for us paying our taxes and contributing in other ways, the government just simply would not exist. And if anybody wants to contradict that, please, in the comments below, let me know where governments make their money if it isn't from the work and labour of its population and resources that happen to be in that landmass, which also belong to the public. The public must always have the absolute right to remove their leaders and replace them with leaders who will do a better job. This whole idea of unelected bureaucracy is a way of basically third-partying all of the decision making so that they can make decisions that you have no control over, and you will just have to live with them because you'll be so busy trying to keep up with inflation and the cost of living and paying off the debts that these countries, all of our countries, have involved themselves in and got themselves bogged down with. You will just not have the time, the finances or the wherewithal to stop any of this. And this is why you might think that the Brexit issue is a small issue. It is not a small issue. This is basically humanity's almost last stand for sovereignty. Because if Brexit fails, if the US fails, we will fall under the same bureaucratic influence where you have absolutely zero control, and you will see the strangest, most dangerous policies enacted. I can't emphasize strongly enough how important it is that we retain our sovereignty, and that when we move forward, any progress that we make as a civilization, as humanity, as communities, that it be done based on the direction that the people want to go in. I mean, there's no point in building a ladder to the moon if nobody wants to go to the moon. And let's face it, most of us are, wrapped up with bread and butter issues, and we're far more concerned with the on-the-ground management of what we have, rather than airy-fairy notions that are probably destined for the dustbin of history. Okay, a lot of these things will not work. No one has explained to me how we're going to pay for all of this stuff when all of the world is already in debt. I mean, the numbers are staggering, and I know I'm kind of rambling on here, but they figure that to pay off the debt in the world today would take 100 years of the entire Earth's GDP, and that's just to bring us even. We're not talking about moving ahead. That's just to cancel all the debt that's out there right now. Now, is anybody telling me that we're going to pay that off? And yet we keep pretending and behaving as if we will, and of course we're just, going off a cliff. There's no way these debts can be paid, and nobody seems to want to admit that. Anyway, that's my little rant on the EU, and I suspect it will fail. because of its inflexibility. But all I can say is good on you, Boris, for coming out tough and telling Brussels exactly what the heck is going to happen. No backstop, and a World Trade Organization WTO rules and a hard exit. And you know what? I've heard so many business leaders actually say that we don't care whether we're in or whether we're out. It's in the middle that we don't want to be. One or the other. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we will talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.